Hi, good evening and welcome to this week's episode of the Minority Report. I'm Marlon David, your host in studio with you for yet another week, and I want to say categorically that it is indeed a pleasure to always sit here and to see you logging in and commenting and being an active part of the participation of this particular program. I want to say thanks, as I usually do, to you, the viewers, to you, the listeners, for making the Minority Report the most viewed and the most watched program in Tobago and on the Tobago Updates Network, and fast becoming one of the highly viewed programs as well in Trinidad. And I also can say the Caribbean folks have been indicating that they have been logging on via Facebook. I know many persons out there in the diaspora especially also log in, and I want to say a special welcome and good evening to those of you who are outside of Tobago. Thanks for viewing with us, thanks for being with us, thanks for sharing your comments and your ideas. So I really want to say I appreciate the fact that you continue to take time out on a Tuesday evening at 8 p.m. to log in and sit with us, sit with your families, your relatives, your friends, your co-workers, colleagues, neighbors, and participate in a program that not only presents to you the facts, but continues to investigate, continues to do the research, continues to do the work, and bring to you, the population, the hardcore truth, documentation, scripts, videos, recordings, you name it, we provide it. And it is all with the aim of fulfilling the mandate as given to the minority coming into this particular framework and into this forum to always be able to account to you, the members of the public. This evening, our show is no different. Actually, we have a number of issues that we're going to be ventilating as we would have continued. We're going to be continuing out of last week's program. Some shocking news. I know many persons would have indicated all on the streets, they see us and they're saying, listen, we didn't know that this thing was so bad. And this evening is going to be no different. We're going to continue to provide you with information and documentation that indicates the horror story that we have now in Tobago that is passing for governance. And so I urge you and I implore you to stay logged on, to stay locked on, and to share the live. Call your friends, call your neighbors, tell them the Minority Report is on and it's time to log in. Let's participate with the information. If you're viewing, you can also view this particular program on the Tobago Updates website. You can view it as well on the Tobago Updates YouTube channel. The platform most persons feel comfortably logging on to is the Facebook page. And again, because it enables us with the opportunity to comment and to share your ideas and so on. I know I say it every week, but I never get weary of saying it. Let's be respectful in our comments as we make our statements, as we respect each other's points of views as well. Let us always remember there are children watching the program, and that is one of the things that we boast of, that the Minority Report is a family type program because it educates different levels and different persons within the viewership. For those of you who subscribe to the Amplia Network, you can turn to channel 102 and on the Amplia Network, and you can see not just the Minority Report, but you can view all of Tobago Updates programming all day, 24 hours a day on the channel 102 of the Amplia Network. For those of you who want to send us a voice note, or you may have a photo, a video that you want to submit, anonymously even, you can do so to sending it to 284-6597. That's 284-6597 or 356-8833. 356-8833. And I want to encourage you to take this route as well, because there are things happening out there in various communities that we may not be able to get to at the point in time, but you, the members of the public who are being affected by those situations, you have this opportunity to send the information to us. We're going to ventilate it, we're going to bring it out and call on the relevant authorities to address those particular issues. So this evening we are going to have our program as we usually structure it out. We try first of all to get into a bit of education, deal with matters that are pertinent and relevant to the development of Tobago, matters that can put us all in a better place, even in terms of conversation. And so this evening is no different. We're going to have a bit of assessment, a report, and so on, coming from my guest in studio, who I'm going to go right into introducing now. To my immediate right, Minority Councillor, Mrs. Petal Daniel Benoit. How are you this evening?
I am wonderful. Good evening, Tobago. Good evening, Trinidad and Tobago. Thank you for tuning in to the Minority Report, another episode. We thank you for your continued support. And it's always good to be on the Minority Report. So welcome.
And to your immediate right, we have Senator Lawrence Hislop. Welcome, welcome back. I don't know if I should say welcome back.
Good evening, Maryland. Good evening, Councillor. It's good to be here as always. Looking forward to the discussion this evening. Looking forward to the information that will be brought to the public. Good evening, Trinidad and Tobago. It is good to have you with us this evening. So welcome, and I hope you have a good time, a good sitting with us this evening.
Indeed, a good sitting. Folks, we want to go right into the first segment of our program this evening. And we always try to set the trend. We always try to do that which is right and to establish formats that others can follow. Last week, we had the regional seminar for parliamentarians of the Caribbean, a 3-day workshop that was hosted in the Parliament in Trinidad. And both Minority Councillor and Senator Hislop were participants at that particular conference/workshop. And one thing that we always want to be able to do is that whenever we participate in anything, we want to be able to come back to you, the public, and to account to you of what would have been done, what were some of the conversations had, who were some of the persons spoken to, and what is the inherent benefit that can be gleaned for Tobago coming out of those conversations. And so this evening I want to bring Councillor into the conversation. You were there bright and early to kick off the conference. How was it? Tell our public what it was about, what were some of the discussions, and how did it impact you as an individual?
No, this was really eye-opening. So as you would have indicated, Marlon, this was a regional seminar for parliamentarians of the Caribbean, and it was hosted by Trinidad and Tobago, the Parliament of Trinidad and Tobago, as well as the IPU, which is the Interparliamentary Union. And the theme for this seminar was a 3-day intensive, very intensive, and the theme was accelerating parliamentary action on climate change for a resilient and sustainable region. We had persons participating from Barbados, from St. Kitts Nevis, from Cayman Islands, from Guyana, Suriname, Grenada, Cuba. And the interesting part, it was not only for governmental parliamentarians, but parliamentarians that sat on both sides. Of course, Trinidad and Tobago. So the Parliament of Trinidad and Tobago and, of course, the Tobago House of Assembly would have participated. And as I indicated, there were parliamentarians both on the government side as well as on the opposition side. And in Trinidad and Tobago, there were parliamentarians, government, opposition, as well as independent. And we would have, and THE, well, of course, I was the representative of the Tobago House of Assembly on the side of the minority, and we had representation on the side of the majority from the presiding officer, as well as the Secretary Pantin, Division of Food Security.
Yeah. Food security.
Yeah, so 3 of us participated on the part of the Tobago House of Assembly, and I think overall we had a participation of about 40 40.
Yeah, it could be.
Yeah, about 40 parliamentarians throughout the region. And as I said, it was an eye-opener. It was really intensive. It was information. It was thought-provoking. It really made you seriously consider the impacts of climate change. And I think one of the things that resonated is that we hear climate change, we hear about climate change, but you know, sometimes it seems so distant. But what resonated is that climate change is real. And across the region, we feel or we have a similar impact of climate change. And I really loved how the program evolved over the 3 days, where they would have given the panel discussions, and there was an opportunity to allow for questions and answer to the panel. And then we had breakout sessions where you really delved into the topics. And some of the topics that resonated with me was the impact of climate change in the region, climate change and health, because we didn't recognize how climate change affects our health as well as our health system. Climate change and artificial intelligence.
Yeah.
So we had some really interesting topics, and climate change and those topics that I just identified resonated with me, as well as how we mitigate against climate change. And we have some, I would say, innovative and simple ways that we can mitigate. That right here in Tobago, we started some, how many years ago? I'm not sure if we recognize that that was one of the, well, for me, I saw that occurring, but not quite understanding that that was a mitigation action, climate change. So it was mind-blowing. It was clear that as a region, we need to do more to address climate change, its impact and its mitigation. And coming out of the conference, that was the general consensus.
Senator Hislop.
But I didn't know Councillor was through. And I share the sentiments of
Yeah, I'm not through, but I'm giving you an opportunity.
I share the sentiments of Councillor Daniel Benoit. It was indeed I don't know if the phrase mind-blowing, we could say more times, but I think it was very revealing. It was extremely revealing. We are aware that the region and small island development states are not the major contributors to this whole issue of climate change, but we are on the receiving end because of our size. So I think one of the key things that came out of that is as the theme says, accelerating parliamentary action. So there is a need for legislative action to treat with the effects of climate change, the effects that it would have on SIDS. And so this came out more forcefully, and hence the reason why parliamentarians were involved, so that we as parliamentarians will see the need for legislation to treat with factors that are as a result of what we are experiencing. Well, climate change. And the thing about it is that climate change is a worldwide phenomenon. It is not just Trinidad and Tobago, it's not just the region, but the challenge is because of our size, it will affect us so significantly. And you know, some persons may say, well, the bigger regions as well will be affected. Yes, the United States, China, Russia, all of them are being affected. Europe, all of them are being affected by climate change. But the challenge for SIDS is that you don't have the landmass to seek shelter if you are inundated with floodwaters as compared to maybe another territory. The effects of more intense hurricanes, the larger storms, is as a result of the climate warming up, the seas warming up. And so we are more on the receiving end of it. so there is this, I think there was a push, and you heard it around the room, for there to be a more collaborative effort by the region to push for the necessary resources and compensation from the developed nations to assist in, because what is critical for small island development states is mitigation measures.
Yeah.
So you were not contributing significantly in your emissions, but you are on the receiving end of it. So there has to be a collaborative effort with regards to the necessary funding for us to create more mitigation system, so that we don't, so we're not as inundated, or we're not as damaged by these things when they happen. You got experiences from places like Dominica, where they're talking about more resilient buildings in terms of, because remember Dominica just experienced a couple years ago massive hurricane. And so you have islands that have the experience and have taken clear policy decisions to change the style of the way they construct their homes, the way they construct their health sectors. I remember I sat on a joint select committee concerning, I think it was with TEMA and the local government as it relates to, well, not necessarily climate change, but how we treat with floods and what results after that. And I remember one gentleman saying that the challenge we may have, one of the challenges we have in Trinidad and Tobago, is that when we build buildings and then we classify the buildings as shelters, the buildings may look good and be built for public consumption, but when you come to shelters, they're not purpose built. And so you have a challenge where you may put a particular building, whether it be a community center or a school, you categorize it as a shelter, but in the real essence of it, it's not a shelter. And so we as small island states really need to look at how we create the legislative framework for, especially for mitigation. I think Councillor spoke to the AI as it relates to how do you use artificial intelligence to assist in your prediction and your mitigation systems as it relates to climate change. And we had some really interesting information that came out that because of the technology of artificial intelligence, you are better able to plot and to plan and to predict now in a faster time span than you would, let's say, 15, 20 years ago. And so whereas AI has its downsides and we know all the negatives where artificial intelligence is concerned, there is also good in the technology, and we have to find ways within the Caribbean, within Trinidad and Tobago, to utilize the technology for the benefit. Because when you look at, let's say, Guyana, Guyana is now experiencing significant issues with the rising sea levels and their drainage issues in Georgetown and throughout Guyana. It was interesting to hear the Guyana representative saying that they experienced too much rainfall. And that was significant. When I heard that, that was significant. That you are taking a country that we have known for its significant rainfall, and they're saying that over the last year or so, they have seen an increase. And I think whenever we have that situation in Trinidad, you always hear the meteorologist, also the Minister of Works and Transport, saying that the challenge may not necessarily be the increase in rainfall, but it is the amount of rainfall that falls in a short space of time and the intensity with which it falls. And so those are some of the challenges that we face throughout the region. And it's not just unique to Trinidad and Tobago or Cuba or Guyana. It's throughout the region. And so this conference created a platform for parliamentarians to hear and to share. It is now for parliamentarians and for governments throughout the Caribbean to look at policy changes. How are we going to treat with our citizens, how we're going to treat with how we're going to deal with mitigation measures, because we know the challenges are coming. So how do we now create policies? How do we create legislative frameworks to treat with mitigating against the increased rainfall, the floods? We can't stop Mother Nature, but we have to look at putting into our building codes as to how we construct our buildings effectively against hurricanes. Where we allow, in terms of your planning, where we allow persons to construct homes. If we know that based on the science and based on the technology, this area is prone to flooding, this area is prone to landslides, we now have to look at legislative frameworks to say you can't build in this particular area, or even look at how do we develop this in terms of spatial planning. Yeah. How do we develop our country?
And also, I think, and in particular, as a region and as small island developing states, we are very, very vulnerable to the impact of climate change. And I think for some, even in Trinidad and Tobago, we have building codes, but it's also a matter of enforcement. Because in the past, we were not impacted. You know, the whole conversation of climate change may not have been at the forefront as it is now. So there may have been areas that we were lax on in terms of enforcing the various codes. So now is where the codes exist, review them, and possibly seem to enforce those codes. And the senator was speaking about, there was in Cayman Islands, because there was a lot of sharing. And when we went into the breakout sessions, you know, you got deeper insights from the various countries that sat around the table about how climate change impacts their countries and measures that they have been putting in place to try to mitigate. And for Cayman Islands in particular, they would have given examples, read their building codes, and how strict they are in relation to their building codes and how it is enforced. And before, I think it was Ivan, there was a major hurricane there. And before that hurricane, there was a lot of complaints about the enforcement and how strict they were in relation to the building codes. But after the hurricane,
people appreciated
what the building codes would have brought in an effort to mitigate against the damages and the more severe damage that could have been done as a result of Ivan. So I think there's a lot of lessons to be learned. There is a lot of sharing, because what resonated as well is that we need to share some more. We need to collaborate some more. Barbados would have spoken about the Barbados initiative. And there was, so remember, was it last year before?
It was year before.
Where Prime Minister Mia Mottley, I think our Prime Minister would have supported her in her bid to, you know, getting increased funding and getting a, I won't say lax, but getting some concessions in relation to funding and how it impacted climate change. So that happened, and Barbados really called for support of the region in that initiative because it's something that will benefit all of us. So there was that. There was a Barbados Initiative 2.0, and while we were at the conference, their representative would have indicated that Barbados Initiative 3.0 was coming. But it would have been presented in their country while we were at the conference. So it's greater collaboration, greater support, knowledge transfer and sharing, and not reinventing the wheel. And I think we also, what resonated as well is how climate change affects our health. Again, in one of our discussions, it came out that climate change affects our health in extreme ways, to the extent that it was reported that one person that is confirmed in Trinidad and Tobago would have died from air pollution.
What?
So when we hear and we see the Sahara dust and we can't see the mountains and the place seems to be overcast as if rain is about to fall, that has an effect on our health.
Affecting people significantly.
And even for me, I did not know that I suffered from sinus, but in the past few years, I seem to have a sinus problem.
And one of the
and it's as simple as that. How climate change is real,
and it's affecting people,
and it affects us all.
I want to ask a question on in the same vein, because I'm very encouraged to hear some of the discussions that would have taken place. Trinidad and Tobago, our mainstay or economic mainstay is fossil fuels. and so the discussion about climate change, we know
how do you balance?
How do you balance with our economic mainstay being fossil fuels still on the drive?
That was a real discussion. And it was a real discussion, interestingly, between Councillor Daniel and myself and some other folks who were on our table. And the question sort of segues into another point I wanted to bring, because I had a conversation with, trying to remember the gentleman's name, but he was the representative from an entity called Blue Planet Alliance. Interestingly, I got an email from him today highlighting something, because their purpose is to assist small island development states in going, Lance Gould is the gentleman's name, in going 100% renewable.
100%, you say.
Right. So I could tell you that based on the information that he shared with us, that the first small island state that signed on to that was Hawaii.
Okay.
And Hawaii passed the legislation to state that they will become 100%. And I'm reading it because they re-emphasized it in the email that was sent. They said in 2015, Hawaii became the first U.S. state to legally require a transition to 100% renewable energy by 2045. And we are in 2024.
Wow.
Yeah? So, and I think based on the information he shared, I'm looking for it to see if it's here, but they are at, I think it's 30% or somewhere there, he said already, renewables. So one of the sidebar conversations I had with him, because he was saying that renewable energy renewables is Trinidad and Tobago's future. And the discussion we were having sidebar was, how do you balance a state that is an energy-driven economy, an industrialized state? How do you balance that with this renewable drive? Now the Blue Planet Alliance is saying that they don't allow countries to sign on to it unless they've made a commitment by law to be 100% renewable by a particular time frame. Right? So in the discussion, I was sharing with him that Trinidad and Tobago is predominantly a gas-based economy, natural gas. I said all our power plants are now fueled by natural gas. And he wasn't aware of that. So he says, well, the beauty about that is that natural gas is what you will consider to be a bridge fuel. So it is cleaner than your conventional bunker fuel and diesel. But it is not as clean as renewables. So it's considered a bridge. It's considered a bridge fuel.
Okay.
So what I said to him, I said, I hear what you're saying, but I don't know how much, because the question I asked him is based on your research. What do your economic numbers say for a country whose standard of living is at this point based on its natural resource of oil and natural gas? what do your numbers say if this country ceases to produce this thing, goes 100% renewable? What
would be the economic drive?
What would be the
impact?
Yes, what would be the economic impact?
Mm-hmm.
And they don't have hard data.
Yeah. So it's a balancing act.
Because it's a balancing act.
Yeah,
So what I shared with him,
act.
I said, listen, to be honest with you, I said I come from the other island in the Twin Island state, from Tobago. And I said I could see something like that being more of a driving force for Tobago than it is for Trinidad.
Mm-hmm.
I said the government has signed on to the Paris Accord and all of these things. There are policies and I just had a couple in front of me there. The government of Trinidad and Tobago has advanced a number of national policies aimed at assessing and addressing the effects and impacts of climate change as a dynamic issue. And among these are the National Climate Change Policy 2011, National Environmental Policy 2018, and the Trinidad and Tobago Vision 2030, the National Development Strategy of Trinidad and Tobago 2016 to 2030. And so these policies have been created as a pathway to reducing, because I don't think that there is any evidence of the government saying that we are going 100% renewable. The government is saying we are going to reduce our carbon footprint. I said, but for Tobago, that may be a significant consideration that you could then say Tobago can say we are going 100% renewable by a particular time frame. And then the assistance from an entity like Blue Planet Alliance to get to that can happen. I said, but I don't see it. And especially, and I even brought up the issue with him with Guyana. Guyana is now experiencing a significant windfall. And that is going to stimulate economic growth in Guyana. How do you then say to Guyana, well, you had to pull that back when Guyana now has the opportunity to build out significant infrastructure within their country, build out human capacity, much needed. And you can literally change. That's right. You can literally change Guyana's entire economic situation.
Their standard of living.
That's right. So how do you balance that? And we understand that climate change is real, but there's also the reality that people
and there's a balancing act all around. Because there's a balancing act with what is the driver of your economy and the impact of climate change. There's also a balancing act with funding and financing and how you mitigate.
Correct.
Because there are limited financial resources and we have competing
interest
in competing things that we need to fund. So
where do I get the money from?
Draw the balance.
So when you say to me, I can't sell natural gas anymore. Because the thing about it, you can't be hypocritical. You can't say that you are going 100% renewable as a country and then you're selling the same product to someone else.
And we enjoy what we enjoy as a country
because of that.
So think about moving that away. What happens to our education system?
Our health sector.
Everything.
Life as we know it.
Everything.
But bear in mind that a suggestion was given by a gentleman from the UNDP, which I found, and most of the participants as well found that it was viable, in that we have such a robust manufacturing sector already. And so one of the areas that TNT can look at making a dent in renewables is by manufacturing the same things that we need, the solar panels, all these things that surround your batteries and so on, that surround renewables. Because a lot of the stuff that is used in this drive to renewable energy is manufactured in China and these places. And so one of the suggestions that the gentleman raised is that we can look at ramping up our manufacturing off, or even starting, because I don't think we do, starting the manufacturing of these things. But even if you start that, and even if we develop that as another cog in the economy of Trinidad and Tobago, you're still not
Still
going
not gonna-
to. You're still not going to
It also
replace.
forces a conversation. I know there's a conversation that we have been having nationally, the whole issue of diversification.
Yeah.
So that now also comes into the picture.
Yeah.
How do we greater
Effectively.
diversify
And
away from
that's right.
if we are to go
Green, and then it also speaks to innovation within our education system, because now you have to look at how do we educate our children so that they can see they could see a livelihood in renewables. How do you so it's not just you going away from fossil fuels and going renewables, but it is an entire holistic change that has to take place within your country. So you have to look at your
Every
education
sector.
system.
It is a culture change.
It is going to be a culture change.
Every
because
sector
how we
is affected.
consider climate change now. I think we need to relook our concept as adults, as children. And I was having a conversation with my 9-year-old, and I was saying to him, I am sharing with him the conversations climate change that we have been having. And he was saying, Mommy, you're talking about global warming. I'm like, and we had a whole conversation about climate change. And I'm like, where did you get this from? And he was like, Mommy, I've been reading.
Yeah.
And he has this series of Diary of a Wimpy Kid. And those are some of the conversations in those books that he has been reading, to the extent that he actually went back to one of the particular series and started reading to me
what it says.
what it said.
So it requires a culture change.
It's a culture
Culturally,
change.
you have
It's
to
how
change,
we consider as adults, and as the senators say, how we inform, educate, advise our children, so that it becomes a part.
Because one of the
of
challenges,
what we do.
one of the things we have, right? And I always say it's a blessing and a curse. It's cheap fuel.
Yeah.
Because I remember saying to someone, before COVID, visited Sindusha, drove into a resort with villas, and the place was extremely dark. They only had the ground level light in the street, and I'm like, how this place looking deserted? So we went into the villa, nice place. The next morning, we speaking to the housekeeper. We asked, these places are occupied? And she said, every single villa is occupied. I said, but we came in last night and the place looked so deserted. And she said, yeah, because nobody keeps the lights on in the rooms that they're not in. Because the cost of electricity in St. Lucia is so expensive that once they walk out of a room, they switch off the lights. We even experienced a situation where the electricity bill was checked when we came in. The meter was red when we came in. And when we were leaving, it was red again. And you had to pay
The difference.
for the consumption.
And
So
we take that for granted.
But we take that for
We
granted.
take
You walk
that
into
for
a
granted.
room,
That's
you
right.
put on the light, you walk out, you leave
so
it
the
on,
housekeeper
you
kept
sleep with
saying,
it on.
the housekeeper
for the
kept saying to
entire
us,
night.
listen, any room that you're not in, turn off the light and turn off the air conditioner. But some of us who have air conditions in our homes have the units on. I see the horse smiling, right? But you have a room that has nobody in it. But the AC is on.
And the lights are on.
And the lights on.
And the fan is on.
That's right. And that's because for so long, we have experienced the luxuries of cheap fuel because we generate it.
Yeah. And every other country
that's right.
that is expensive, because I remember going to Japan
Every single
in 2009, traveled to Japan and going to the washroom. We were at the hotel, left the conference room, going into the washroom. And as you are entering the washroom is dark. And you're wondering like why the place so dark?
And the lights switch on.
But as you enter,
The lights come on.
the lights
Sensor.
come on.
Yeah. And all of that is
Even the escalators.
all of those things are mitigated. Mitigated.
The
So they don't leave it up
escalators
for
will
human.
not move. So for us, we have our escalators moving 24
all the time, just burning
all the
electricity.
time. Yeah.
But they won't move unless somebody steps on it.
It won't move unless somebody stepped on it.
And all of those, you see,
This was
all
2009.
those things add up, They add up,
Little by little, it adds up.
Yeah.
And so it definitely has to be, if we're talking mitigating factors, and we're talking climate change, there has to be a culture shift
Yeah.
in the way we consume.
Awareness.
Yeah. I know electric cars are, but that and all has its own little nuances, because where you use it, the power, where you use it, the
Exactly.
charging, right? It's the same electric grid, right? So all these things have the downsides, but the reality is, it is real. Small island states are on the receiving end of it more. Well, I shouldn't say more than anybody else, but
we are more vulnerable.
But we're more vulnerable because of our size.
Yeah.
And so we really have to look at ways in which we could treat with reducing our carbon footprint. We may not be able to go as a nation. We may not be able to go in the near future 100% renewable, but we have to find ways to reduce our footprint,
and
to at least help. And
individually, I think
because it helps your pocket,
Yes, of course.
It helps your pocket.
No, I am a little bit more conscious because I take off my AC. I take off the lights when I'm not in the room.
Yeah.
I literally go around my house and switch off the lights in areas that are unoccupied.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Greater awareness, greater education.
We like lighting if nobody
Folks,
but you turn it on and you just
leave it.
don't remember to take them off.
Really, this information is indeed beneficial. I see the impact that it's had on both of you all. You seem to be very excited about this conversation.
It was eye-opening.
Yeah. And it's something that I'm glad the catchment, it started with the policymakers. Because as you were saying, Senator Islap earlier on, this needs to be legislated. And as we build out the legislation, we develop policy and we implement policy now that affects the culture changes.
But that's what shifts the culture. That's what, because sometimes you have to legislate it for it to change, because people will not change on their own. So
exactly.
Sometimes, and the sad part of
codes
it.
But
the sad part of it has been a legislature, being in government, is that sometimes you do things and it's considered draconian. But sometimes you require it, because I remember when the seatbelt law was first passed.
Oh Lord.
It was war. War with that seatbelt story. Nobody, you could have said, well, one and police was getting real cost for that seatbelt story. But it's almost automatic now. You sit in a car as a driver. And one of the first things you do is pull for your seatbelt.
Even your cars, you sit down in your cars and your car continue to beep until you pull that seatbelt.
So it has created legislation in the past creates culture change.
And I think there also has to be a level of public education.
Yes.
Yeah, that's
but that goes hand in hand.
Hand in hand.
It's supposed to go hand in hand.
Hand in hand.
But we ought not to take it for granted.
Well,
because
you're right.
Having people informed about why we're doing what we're doing and the benefits of enforcement.
Yeah. So it manages expectations and everything. Yep. So guys, we want to say thanks first of all for the organizers of the conference. We definitely see the impact that it has had, and we trust that those with the relevant authority and the political will take heed to the cries and the information that we see unfolding here. We're going to go to a short break, and when we get back, we have some matters that we need to treat with this evening, matters of importance, matters of illusions and delusions. So we want you guys to stay logged on, share the live, continue, and we take a short break, pay some bills, and we'll be right back.
Good morning, good morning, put a smile on your Coconut's Cafe, the buffet restaurant that specializes in all your tasty local dishes. For breakfast and for lunch. Breakfast includes coconut bake and sada roti, served with chokers, bull joil, and sausages in tomato sauce. Not forgetting beef and cheese pies, shepherd's pie, macaroni pie, and rice in various styles. Meat served in a variety of flavors, garden salads, and pasta salads. All this accompanied by fruit juices, coconut water, your choice of a great combination to appease your taste buds. So call us today to order, as we are here to accommodate your busy schedules or if you are having a cooking day off.
The best place to stay in Tobago is at Thorn's Place, with rates starting as low as 200 TT. Call or WhatsApp 745-7306 or 682-8676. We are located uptown Scarborough, 5 minutes away from the port. Remember, at Thorn's Place, our aim is to make your stay safe and affordable.
Rotisserie, mouth-watering fries, salads, combos, and specials galore. Feeling for something to eat? Come and see. Our rotisserie is seasoned to the T. Kicking chicken, masala, and jerk roast. Crispy fries made from scratch. Who do you know can beat that? Or salads freshly cut and packed. When you taste it, you'll be wanting to come back. So come check us out on number 2 Robinson Street, Uptown Scarborough, Tobago. We open on Saturday nights from 7:30 to 11:30 p.m. Monday to Thursday, we're open from 10 a.m. to 9:30 p.m. and on Friday, 10 a.m. to 4:30 p.m. Contact us at 772-7443 and all social media handles at The Rotisserie Factory.
You can now get whatever you need whenever you need it anywhere in Tobago with Tapago. Your meals, medication, groceries, and shopping all delivered directly to you. No more hassle, no more stress. Get the Tapago app today on Google Play or Apple App Store.
That's TAPPOGO and let us deliver to you.
Check our website at www.tapogo.app or call the experts at 494-TOGO and 484-4746. Tapago. Relax. We will get it to you. Tapago's at your service.
Tobago Glass Supplies has been a leading name for over 37 years in the glass and aluminum market in Tobago. We provide an extensive range of high-quality, innovative aluminum and glass products for commercial and residential use. Competitive prices with superior and professional services by committed employees who are guided by rigid quality standards. Tobago Glass Supplies specializes in the manufacture and installation of glass and aluminum products that are essential to today's homeowners and the business environment. We are engaged in marketing, sales, and installation of a variety of products. These ranges from windows and doors to necessities such as mirrors for homes and vehicles, designed and manufactured in-house or imported.
So folks, we are back in studio and a bit of laughter, light moment there between the panelists and the management of the Tobago Updates Network, simply because today we have a significant occasion that we are hoping that at the end of the program we could join in the celebrations as well. Today is the birthday of Mr. William Nana, management guru, CEO, managing director, everything at Tobago Updates Network. So we want to, from the Minority Report team, the Assemblyman Kelvin Morris, Minority Leader, Minority Councillor, Senator Hislop, and myself, we want to wish Mr. Nana God's blessings and continued blessings, I should say, over his life. And, you know, that the ideas keep coming, that he never runs out of the ideas, but more so that he never runs out of the patience to deal with so much that happens here on the Tobago Updates Network. So happy birthday. And we're waiting for the invitation to the after party. We haven't gotten it yet, but as soon as we do get it, we will let the general public know where we're meeting up tonight. So, so folks, we are back in studio, and we want to shift the conversation a bit. Minority Council, again, we see it's I don't know how you guys do it in the house, but it's treachery. It's intellectual treachery to sit and sometimes to subject yourself to what passes in the house for conversation, for questions being answered, and so on. And I want to say something here before we go into that. I want to remind people that the minority has its role and responsibility. Some persons act as if they want the minority to simply shut up and don't say anything. There's a reason why there's a minority and there's a mandate to carry out in terms of holding this administration or any administration at that fact accountable for the way that they manage the resources of the island, of the country, and so forth. And this minority has consistently engaged in quality work, quality research, quality information, providing the public with, and will continue to do so regardless of who the naysayers are. Coming out of that, I want us to just go to a clip. One secretary has been consistently asked a particular question, and again, we like to show you, the members of the public, what the minority leader and minority councillor are faced with in the house, and the reluctance of these individuals every single time to simply answer questions with respect to their performance, with respect to spending monies, with respect to things that are happening under their charge. Mr. Director, just run that clip first, please.
Question 118 to the Secretary, Division of Tourism, Culture, Antiquities and Transportation.
Councillor Burris.
Thank you, Madam Presiding Officer. Question number 118 in relation to the Personal Assistant to the Secretary of Tourism, Culture, Antiquities and Transportation. Relative to a recent official overseas travel, can the Secretary confirm the following? A, did the Personal Assistant go on any official overseas travel to London? B, was a check payment made out to the personal assistant for per diem? And C, did the personal assistant collect the check payment? Madam Presiding Officer, no, the personal assistant did not go on any official overseas travel to London. With respect to B, if the personal assistant is part of an official delegation for travel anywhere as per circular memorandum, a check payment will be made out to them for per diem. And C, under those circumstances, if that personal assistant is part of any official delegation, they will collect that check payment as per normal, as is customary for anyone who makes up that delegation to travel.
Minority Leader, any follow-up?
Can the Secretary tell this Honorable House the period between the check being encashed and the period between the funds being returned? Thank you.
Madam Presiding Officer, I am not certain as to what he's making reference.
Okay, was the check encashed?
Check to whom?
To the personal assistant, because she admitted that the check was prepared, it was collected, and what we are now asking...
Minority Leader?
What?
Members?
She said yes.
Minority Leader, I don't think you heard what her answer was. She...
Ask you to repeat.
Members, please. Councillor Burris, can you make it emphatically clear what your response was?
Thank you, Madam Presiding Officer. Did the personal assistant go on any official overseas travel to London? No. Was a check payment made out to the personal assistant for per diem? My answer was, if the personal assistant forms part of any official delegation to travel, as per circular memorandum, per diem will be prepared for that officer. Did the personal assistant collect the check payment? If the personal assistant makes up an official delegation and a per diem payment is prepared for that officer as per customary as with every other member of that delegation, that check payment would be collected.
So we have here, I don't know if this primary school they teach you to be clear in your responses and your answers. We have here a question that required yes, yes, no, no, and we saw the secretary yet again evade this particular question. We don't know what it is she making up time for, but something that she should have said. This did not happen, or yes, he collected, yes, he cashed. Mm-hmm. She went on to create a scenario. If this is the case, then the person will do such and such. If it is not the case.
This question has been on the order paper for quite some time. So there were a number of sit-ins that the secretary did not, she was excused, so she did not respond to this question until now. This may have been about 2 or 3 sit-ins ago that this question was posed. So, for whatever reason, there seemed to be a ducking and hiding to respond to questions. And as you said, Mr. Moderator, did the personal assistants go on any overseas travel? The secretary said no.
No, right.
The other question was a check payment made out to the personal assistant for per diem. If the person did not go, then no check payment should have been made. So correct. Was there a check payment made? To me, the simple answer was yes.
Yes
or no. So I don't understand the scenarios. If and if and if. Part C of the question was, did the personal assistant collect the check payment? You didn't go. Yes or no, a check was made out? Was a check made out, yes or no? If the check was made out, did you collect it? Yes or no? Why is that so difficult to answer? And because of the responses, it makes you wonder, what is there to hide?
What are they hiding?
And before, one of the follow-up, the clip didn't go into that. But after the secretary responded, repeating her scenarios, if this
happened, this is what
one happens. Of the follow-ups was from the minority leader was, because she indicated, the follow-up was asking whether or not the check was encashed.
Yeah.
And if he went on the travel. And the secretary went on to basically indicate that she don't know what travel the minority leader was speaking about. When in the preamble, we spoke about it, and if you did not know what travel the minority leader was speaking about in the follow-up, how did you answer A?
Yeah.
To say no, that he didn't travel. But again, to me, these are simple questions that require simple responses. Yeah. And the question is, why isn't there a simple response to a simple question?
Always a duck and a hide.
Well, we have. I have nothing to say on it. I think the minority leader, the minority councillor, have been doing an excellent job, and we await the results or the true answer to the question.
We even saw, and we're going to just touch on this before shifting our conversation, because we have quite a lot to discuss this evening, also in the area of health, because we saw the now Deputy Chief Secretary ventilate some strange bits of information as well in this very sitting, and we're going to get to it a bit. But we want to go into the next clip, and I'll ask the director to also run that clip.
Question number 10.
Thank you, Madam Presiding Officer. Question number 110 to the Secretary, Division of Tourism, Culture, Antiquities and Transportation, Councillor Tashia Burris.
Councillor Burris.
Thank you, Madam Presiding Officer. Question 110. Following the recent resignation of the chairman of the Tobago Performing Arts Company, TPAC, which was followed by the resignation of the chairman of the Tobago Tourism Agency Limited, TTAL, can the Secretary indicate the following? A, the circumstances under which the chairman of both companies resigned, and B, do you agree with the statement of the former chairman of the TTAL that these two boards have imploded? Madam Presiding Officer, as for part A of the question, I would like to make reference to Standing Order 25-1F2, which states that a question shall not be asked which seeks information which are in their nature secret. Resignations are private matters between the office holder and the employer, and it is not seemly to disclose these particulars without the permission of the office holder. The matter of someone's reason for resigning an appointment is secret to them, and disclosing that information in this manner is an infringement of their right to privacy. As for part B of the question, I would like to make reference to Standing Order 25-1E, which states a question shall not contain arguments, inferences, opinions, imputations, epithets, ironical expressions, or hypothetical cases. This question contains an opinion, which is the opinion of an implosion of the board. The question posed asks me to comment on an opinion proffered, and from a source that cannot be verified, and therefore I'm unable to give an answer to this question.
So I don't know if this is the delusional part of this evening's program, or if it's the misrepresenting part of this evening's program. But yet again, we see a clear strategy not to answer a question. Now, there are a number of concerns here. One of the first concerns is you have a situation where the presiding officer has approved a question. The presiding officer, in her capacity, looked at the question and realizes that this question breaches none of the standing orders. And here you have members of the House taking the stand to school the presiding officer and to blatantly, in other words, say she's not answering that question by quoting standing orders.
Because in her interpretation of the standing orders, the question doesn't conform.
So she challenges the presiding officer's authority, which we know how difficult it is to challenge, especially from the minority side. But the second more concerning issue is the fact that these resignations were public knowledge.
All over the media. There were even copies of one resignation, if I recall, plastered on social media, mainstream media. And what is secret? What is secret about a senior official of the Tobago, of an agency of the Tobago House of Assembly, submitting a letter of resignation? And if it is secret, generally, and you don't want to disclose, the letter may say that you no longer wish to continue for personal reasons. But I don't understand what is secret about a public entity.
And Minority Councillor, she even went on to state that the information, what was asked with respect to implosion, cannot be validated. But those were the words of the chairman in her resignation, that the board has imploded. So we know what the source of the information is, the implosion. She said it can't be validated. So this information came from Suriname.
Yeah, but more than that, in her effort not to respond, again, this is another question that was on the other paper for months.
For months.
And even if you wanted permission from the person resigning, you could have sought the permission to facilitate responding to the question.
Yeah.
Because it has been on the order paper for months. So you can clearly write and ask, are you, and if it is your interpretation, that is how the standing orders, and if you are really about accountability and transparency, not to me, but to the people, there was sufficient time for you to write and seek permission to share if you thought it was private.
Yes. Exactly. Exactly. Senator Islap, I know you have something to say on this one.
On this one?
Yeah, because your expressions were priceless.
My expressions are simply that, or my expression simply said that I'm at loss as to who we have in governance in Tobago. The minority side of the house, minority leader and minority councillor, are fulfilling their constitutional mandate, which is to operate in the Tobago House of Assembly, to speak for the minority. It is within their rights to ask questions, to seek clarity on things that are in the public domain. It is their right to ask questions, to get information from the majority side. The majority side comes across as if the minority has no right to ask a question when these same people who were in minority were asking questions of the then administration.
Yeah.
The councillor's obvious ability to sidestep, to bob and weave, means that she has extreme political dexterity and dexterity of the English language.
Lord.
So she has the ability to move in almost Muhammad Ali-esque style. Fly like
It's
a butterfly.
amazing.
And so I compliment the councillor and the Secretary for Tourism, Transportation, and Antiquities. That's the division.
Yeah.
I compliment the Secretary's ability to not answer the question as well as to do the job of the presiding officer and the clerk of
Yes, very, very talented.
I compliment her on that. If they continue down that path, well, I should also say they have the right to continue down that path, to bob and weave as they see fit, but the people will adjudicate accordingly. Yeah, the people will adjudicate it. Because the population isn't dumb. And the population understands what you do.
Erroneous.
Because the question was, that was the question? Did
resignation?
No. So all right.
Okay.
The first question. Did your personal assistant accompany you? No. Did the personal if the personal assistant and there was an easy way if you're being straightforward with the population that first question could have been dealt with outright. If your personal assistant didn't travel, then there's no need to answer question 2 or part B of the question, because if they didn't travel, they don't have the issue of a check for per diem doesn't even come up. So if they didn't travel,
you're not supposed to.
Well, if they didn't travel, there's no issue of a check. If there's no issue of a check, then there's no issue of encashing a check. So your answer to your question was no. Your first answer was no, they didn't travel. Second, part B says, was it a check? No. Then they are no check because they didn't travel.
Right.
Part C, was the check in cash? it had no check to encash because the person then traveled, so there was no check.
And they didn't receive.
So then B and C
was null and void. Because of the answer.
But you have now created a space. For conspiracy theory.
Yeah.
And it may not even be conspiracy.
Why you didn't just answer?
You have now created a space for us to be questioning you as to why you didn't answer the question.
Or why you couldn't answer
the question. Or why you couldn't answer the question because you answered
straightforward.
A was straightforward. No. If there is no for A, then there is no for B. And there is no for C.
Supposed to have no for the others.
I'm just saying. Yeah. They should. Now your second one, you schooling, as you rightly said, schooling the minority councillor and the presiding officer. Because what people don't understand is that when a question is filed, the secretary will just get the question the day that you ask the question. You know? The question is, I feel people think that when the minority leader gets up and asks a question,
it's the first
time the secretary.
No.
It's not the first time.
No.
The question has to go through places, checks and balances before it gets placed in the other paper. So the councillor could help me out there, but I think it's the same thing. You file the question to the clerk of the house. The clerk can sit and go through the question before the question even gets to the presiding officer. Find out if the question is in keeping with the standing orders. Once the question is in keeping with the standing orders, the question then goes to the presiding officer for additional vetting and approval. So for a question for question 101?
110 and 118.
So for question 118 or 110 to be placed on the order paper to the councillor, it was approved by the clerk, it was approved by the it was seen by the clerk, vetted by the clerk, and approved by the presiding officer. So for the councillor to now come in the house and say that the question does not...
Basically, she's saying the question is out of order.
Right. So for the councillor to say that the question is out of order, she is being out of order. And if I believe the presiding officer would have been within her right to instruct the councillor to answer the question. Because the question was approved by the office of the presiding officer. If the presiding officer approved the question and the question is on the order paper, you can't now come and say that the question doesn't fit the criteria because it breaches standing order A, B, C, D, F, G. She is being out of order. I say
so we have to move very quickly because our guest has now logged on.
Oh, wow.
And we want to get right into that part of the conversation. And here she is in all her glory.
Hi, Doc.
Good evening, Dr. Carrington. How are you?
Quite good.
Okay, we are not hearing her yet in studio.
Hi, Dr. Carrington.
I am hearing you.
Nice.
Excellent.
Nice. We are hearing her now. So Doc, we're glad to have you in. We were waiting with bated breath. We have, again, in the last sitting, we would have heard the Deputy Chief Secretary and the Secretary of Health respond to a question by the minority leader with respect to the operationalizing of the Roxboro Hospital. And among other things that she would have said, I don't want to go into the full clip because it's just over 6 minutes long. But I think the general population, just to summarize, one of the things that she said is that the facility was ill-equipped when they got it, that it was not constructed in a manner that was consistent with industry standards. Departments couldn't fit into where they were put. A lot of retrofitting had to be done. And finally, one of the things that she said, and again, this was amazing, the equipment that was in the hospital for the commissioning of it was borrowed equipment. And as soon as the hospital was commissioned, all this equipment was removed from the hospital, rendering the departments useless. Dr. Carrington, it is laughable to say the least. Take us through that journey of this hospital coming on stream.
Thank you for having me. I am really happy to be part of this discussion, but sad because, you know, I joined a team in 2017, and that team had an agenda to pursue the enhancement of healthcare delivery on the island. And included in that is the enhancement of the secondary level of care, while at the same time improving the primary care level, which is the health promotion disease prevention bit. And you would recall that we would have addressed that in case of the Mariah Health Center, in terms of the primary care. And in the case of the Roxboro Health Center, we had a new design which incorporated both the primary care and the secondary care. And so it's important to understand the design. The comment I want to make from the outset is one must understand that when you are designing a hospital, you design the hospital, you plan the hospital, and while you are building, you are also planning how you will commission. It's not done after. So anybody who is saying that at the end, you have to now retrofit and all of that, that is inconsistent with how this discipline operates. I have to say that because in part of my own training, design of hospitals and all of that, you treat with commissioning one time. What that does is that as you deal with the site, all those plannings you have to do, you do all of that right up to when it is to be open. So you can't now say when it is time to commission that the size of the rooms are not in order. You can't say that is missing this and that, because you have enough time in the 2-year span or so, whatever time is given. Because in the planning process, all those things are done. Let me also say why it is inconsistent, because as you build, you are taking care of planning for the loading. So you're not building and then working out how do you load, or if you can load, or whether the loading can fit the space. It's not done that way. So if that is being said, it is really inconsistent with what the standard is. Also, I listened to the clip in terms of the equipment. There was something around talking about licensing and they didn't say accreditation. They spoke about making sure that the space, for instance, like laboratory and all of that. Now, all of these things you're talking about, they don't fit the discipline that I belong to, I have to say. I have participated in many designs and constructions of hospitals. I have. The persons, the UDICOT, they have experience in design and building of hospitals and health centers, health facilities. They have. It is inconceivable that the UDICOT, who has been building hospitals in this country for years, will build a Roxboro hospital and say this room is not for that, this room can't fit, and somebody says no, this room is not for that, and this room. It does not work like that. It does not. I mean, with the greatest of respect, it does not operate like that. Let me just say that because I was part of the team from the ground up, because in the initial stages, the efforts were to upgrade the Roxboro facility. And then when we recognized that we can improve what we wanted to offer to the eastern side of the island, we designed a facility that took care of both. There's hardly any I could recall that is designed like that incorporates primary and secondary. So you have primary care and it's kind of back to back with the secondary care. Also, to say that it does not or cannot provide so and so, and it can't do whatever type of service. Let me just say, one of the things the then administration did was to realign the specialists and subspecialists, subspecialties in the Scarborough General in anticipation of the coming on board of the Roxboro Hospital. So in the Roxboro Hospital, you would have on the ground floor, you have primary care, and you have the emergency room with all the clinical support services there, supporting both primary and secondary. So you have medical imaging, you have pharmacy, laboratory on the ground floor. And then on the first floor, you would have, you have the inpatient. I'm hearing about not being able to do inpatient services. It was designed and it is there. Now, what I think has happened, when there are new users, new leaders, they come with their fresh ideas and they want to make adjustments. Long-term investment like hospitals, you just can't do that. You can't. The hospital is a hospital for the future. And it incorporates the wellness and all of that on the one hand, and the short and long stay on the other. It caters for inpatient services. So you have on the first floor, and I mean, I know it in my head, on the first floor, you have female and male ward there. You have maternity services. I'm hearing them talking about dialysis is in there. There's a small dialysis unit is in there. So you even have a small intensive care. You have the operating theater, and all of those. So to say that it is not maybe designed and catering for, and you have to do all those things. I am not sure if the persons who assume responsibility for the commissioning understand how a hospital is designed and how it operates. A hospital is not like any other, it's not a house. So you don't, sometimes if you didn't build your house to purpose, or if you purchase a house that you didn't plan, you then find yourself, the laundry, they didn't put a laundry in. I need a laundry here, I need a playroom here, and because it wasn't purpose built. This Roxboro Hospital was purpose built. It was designed to provide for East Tobago emergency room services. And so on the ground floor, you have emergency room services. And from that, so that if anything occurs, you can move from the ER, you go into emergency, you go into inpatient care. In those, you even have pediatrics. I just remember that. You even have pediatrics in there. I'm hearing them saying about this and that, about dialysis team and whatnot. Let me just say that the Scarborough Health Center has been providing dialysis services for years. So the competence is there. You have the nursing staff, you have the medical staff. I do not know what is all this about recruitment and all this thing about the dialysis services and thing. What was envisaged is that Roxboro will now have, I think, 2 or 3 chairs, so that you didn't have to come to Scarborough to do your dialysis. What is this thing about moving this from here to there and whatnot? The specialist services, all are not expected to be there because, as I said, we realigned this Scarborough subspecialties. So they to give the support to Roxboro in the cases where you didn't have them. So they will have, you can have pediatrics, you have internal medicine, you have maternity services, you have an intensive care bed, I think 1 or 2, something like that. They're all in there, and anything else that you did not have that is required for a patient, that patient, and for inpatient care, that patient is transported to Scarborough General. And so there is no reason to not be able to provide a 24-hour emergency room service? Why if something happens in East Tobago, they must race down to Scarborough? You have all of those. You have an operating theater on your first floor. You have support for anesthesiology, all of that. You have a healing garden. So all of those things are in there. And I think the challenge is not understanding the design of a health facility, not understanding that this one incorporates both primary. And if you ask, not many islands have that design where you have primary care, so all your wellness things will take place there. And if you have an emergency, the emergency room is there. You have all those services, the treatment areas, the doctors, and so on the ground floor. You have the ambulance services and all of that, the trauma areas, all of that is there. And if you have to ward the patient, the next floor, you have inpatient care for internal medicine, pediatrics, you have maternity services, dialysis services. So I am not sure why the difficulty, because the conversation about licensure for a hospital, it doesn't happen that way. You don't go around saying, okay, I have to credit the lab before I could open it, or you have to fix this and that and put this in. It doesn't work like that, because in the loading, when you design the hospital, the loading is done, and in there you have one examination bunk, one infusion pump, one ventilator, whatever it is. You know what is in the room when it is designed. Why are you now saying that we have to break down a wall and break? That is a different hospital that they are talking about, not the Roxboro hospital. Yes, sir.
So, Dr. Carrington, I, if you notice, you saw me raising my hand because this is definitely school we in. And I'm hoping that the OJT secretary is also sitting in front of her television, being schooled on the information. Before we close off this segment, I want you to clear up one concern, because the secretary also alluded to the fact that the hospital was only outfitted with machinery and so on for the commissioning, and after the commissioning took place, for the opening, after the opening took place, that all the equipment was then removed and sent back from wherever it was borrowed. Could you clear that up for us?
Let me just say, I've never heard of that kind of arrangement for hospitals. Never heard of that. Also, in my years, I have never seen that necessary at all. Because from the start, even before I left office, the procurement and all that was in place. Why would you, or where would you? Because these items are not stocked anywhere. Let me say, for instance, if you go shopping, if you're going to buy skirts or blouses or what, it's not like you could go pick it up off the shelf, like that. So you procurement process. That's why it takes so long. When you are planning, you procure the things even before you're ready to open. Where would have gotten those pieces of equipment from? From which hospital to load it the way it was loaded and remove it overnight to go elsewhere? I mean, I don't know how possible that is. I really don't know. It's not even practical. I don't know if it's practical. For instance, would you have set up your tower in the intensive care unit and dismantle it and send it to Trinidad? The way how the infrastructure is, I don't know that you could dismantle those things and roll them away. With the greatest of respect, I don't know you could do it in that way. It's not like a chair or a table. It's not like a computer, you pull it out and thing, and it's not quite like that. So I don't know, for instance, if you install a CT scan, you could take it out and take it elsewhere and then you bring it back. It's difficult for me to...
Machine.
It's difficult. It's really difficult to understand.
Thank you so much, Doc, for providing such in-depth and intense information that I'm certain not just for us here in studio, but all of Tobago and all of Trinidad and Tobago has brought a great amount of clarity. I'm seeing persons actually asking the question then, is it then that the secretary has misrepresented the truth with respect to her responses? And I would leave that up for the general public to determine. But what I can say is that the information that you've provided, indeed, in other words, you know what it is you're talking about. It was crystal clear, and I think that no one can challenge, and I'm putting this out there for even the Secretary of Health presently, to challenge this information and to come back to the public to say anything along the lines of what she would have stated previously. As a matter of fact, I think I want to issue a call to the Secretary of Health to apologize to the public for spreading misinformation about a facility that was received on a platter and should have been operationalized by this point in time. Again, this has been heightened by the recent death of the young lady and her baby. Again, condolences going out to the family. But one thing the mother would have stated is that if the Roxboro Hospital was functional, then her daughter and granddaughter would have been alive today. And I think that it is very low of the secretary to try to cast blame elsewhere instead of accepting responsibility for what could have been averted and ended in the death of a mother and a baby. Dr. Carrington, I can never say thank you enough for your wealth of experience and your wealth of information that you continue to share with us. I don't know if Minority Counsel or Senator Hislop have anything to say to you before we close off.
No, it was really very clear, because if you sat and you listened to the secretary in response to that question, you would have sworn that everything that was placed in the hospital was cleared out and taken back to where it came from. And before, the secretary would have indicated, even upon coming into office, the secretary made a promise to open the Roxboro Hospital.
Yes.
And when this is the second or the third time that she was asked about making the hospital a 24/7 facility. And instead of indicating what are the real delays or the reasons for that not happening to date, or not being able to fulfill the promise, the secretary again decided to bob and weave and blame the past administration for
but
that not happening.
And I want to thank Dr. Carrington for really coming on tonight. Again, every time she makes an intervention on the Minority Report, it is with real clarity. With what is taking place in our health sector and where we could have been. Compared to where we are now. And when you look at, if you make the comparison between the hospitals that are being opened and commissioned in Trinidad, the larger facilities, and we have had a facility in Roxboro that has been there for the last 2+ years, just languishing and just hopping along as if the hospital itself is a patient.
Underutilized.
That if the hospital is a sick patient and you have incompetent doctors, and I'm saying that from the perspective that the person with the mandate to roll out and to bring this facility for the people of East Tobago, something that in the wisdom, the previous administration in collaboration with central government. And that's something we need to remember. It is the central government under Dr. Rowley who made the commitment along with the previous THA administration to bring a world-class facility to the people of East Tobago, something they've been clamoring for years. It has now been placed there. And we now have a situation where we have incompetence rearing its head, that the place cannot be commissioned fully for the benefit not of the politicians, but for the benefit of the people. And I want to thank Dr. Carrington publicly for her service to Tobago. It's unfortunate that we're in a situation now where who we have managing the system is unable to implement and to operationalize a place that has been placed there for them on a platter as councillors.
And I think what is...
Sure. Can I make a quick point to say? Easy to tell whether, for instance, the hospital campus, check and see whether they are moving around, checking and saying that they have to measure this, take down that, fix that, whether they have to certify this and certification. Those things don't happen the way they are saying that they happen. That's not the way. You know, and I mean, there's not the understanding as to how a hospital is designed and how is this to be commissioned. If you look back at in any hospital, you would see how it is done. That hospital should have been commissioned long ago. It can be made a 24-hour hospital because that is what it is. The primary care piece of it, understanding what it is important. You have to understand that the primary care side is not 24-hour, because that is where your clinics, your wellness and so will occur. But your emergency room and all of that with your clinical support services and your inpatient services, they are in that hospital and can be made operational. You don't have to take down any walls. Somebody's trying to rebuild something. That is some other facility, not the Roxboro Hospital. Roxboro Hospital is designed differently. It is 24-hour, but it provides as well health promotion, disease prevention on the one side, and you have emergency room on the other side, and you have first floor, you have inpatient care, top floor, you have the administration. I mean, I know the design, I could sketch it on a bit of paper. Everything that is where and how the flow is, all the processes and so on. And so people are talking about now writing policies, and so you don't have to reinvent the wheel. What is this about now writing policies for dialysis services? How do you administer dialysis services? Is that you now writing that? This is a disease condition that occurs, have been occurring in our population and others for years. So you don't have to now write that. You don't have to write the protocols. There are protocols that exist. You adopt those. You adjust accordingly. So anybody who's saying they have to now write protocols, so Roxboro Hospital is not aware as to how that goes. You don't run around writing a protocol for every diseases that are in every population that we know. We capture them, we adjust, and we use those and roll it out. What it is you have to be writing? What is that you are writing? Not for the Tobago population, has to be for some other population. You know, and it's easy. Any recent hospital or previous hospital, you ask them how this is done. You see that Port of Spain Hospital? I mean, this was planned a long time. I was part of that team a long time ago. The commissioning team is already in place since it was building. Not what they're doing now. It was building. Unfortunate as it is that this team is not, because the commissioning team was already in place in the last administration. So it was better for them to try to understand who are the people who are part of that team. Read all the records and see what was envisaged in rolling out the Roxboro Hospital. What's the use of the healing garden? Do they know what are you using it for? Why the primary and the secondary is back to back like that? Why did we design it like that? You know, understand how it is expected to work. And it is a 24-hour facility. So, if they want to,
because I think you made all of Tobago a lot clearer as to what the Roxboro Hospital was intended to produce, and I think it would have demystified all the misinformation that is currently out in the public domain.
So we did in fact realize that it is not only Columbus that lied. Doc, thank you very much for coming in with us this evening. Yet again, as always, crystal clear, packed with information. I am going to put you on notice that we're going to require you coming back in the very near future, whilst we continue to build out some visioning, especially in that area of healthcare for Tobago. Our conversations earlier involved the whole issues of climate change, how it has been affecting health, even around the world and affecting us here in Trinidad and Tobago. And so we would definitely want you to be part of that conversation when it comes back up. But as always, thank you very, very much for being a part of the program.
Okay, you're welcome.
And folks, I mean, we have gone a bit over our time, but again, I think that it was absolutely necessary that we have this level of clarity coming forth in terms of clearing up information that we are seeing daily spread into the Tobago domain. So we are out of time, but we look forward to seeing you guys next week, Tuesday again. Let's get in early, and as usual, we're going to be packed with information. We have some more stuff to get out and some receipts to deliver next week. Again, about the Division of Tourism. We have some stuff coming out of the Division of Works. So folks, thank you. Have a wonderful evening. Stay blessed and put God first in everything. Have a good night.